we now open the floor for questions until about 7:35, about 20-minute, and then we'll have refreshments. And so I invite Tom to facilitate the answer and question period.
Hi, everyone. Maritina just mentioned that I'm the Member Services Manager at Metro, so I deal with membership, libraries and archives at Metro. And Ramona and I kind of brought this idea together and organized most of the elements of this event, so we're very excited that you're all here. So the focus of the discussion is really to start off with, questions from you for the panelists on what was presented here, and then kind of to think about what does this mean for libraries and archives? What is the role that libraries and archives can play with AFR NYC, and what are the next steps? So that's kind of just a structure for our discussion. So let me just hand it over to you for questions then. If you just want to raise your hand, just for the purpose of everybody being able to hear everybody, if you have a question, please stand up so everyone can hear you. Okay? All right. Jason.
My question is particularly, I guess, to Dr. Julca and Ms. Noonan. You think about limited economic resources that we have to deal with some of these, especially libraries and archives. Is there like a magic ratio that we should be thinking about as far as preparation versus response? So is it a 50-50 thing where we're doing preparation, 50% response, or is there a way that we should find a better balance?
If you can prepare enough, you don't need to respond. Or you can minimize the amount that you need to respond. I think about that a lot in the development of our heritage response team, and my hope is that we never have to deploy them. I want to be able to increase our programming and increase the dissemination of information and help cultural institutions develop their own disaster plans and put in the mitigation efforts in place so that they never need us. That's would be my preference. But just in case they do, we'll be there.
Yes, Beth.
I was just thinking, is it worth it to think about a repository such as that in Norway for seeds? Should there be a repository that's very safe, say inland, for cultural artifacts? And I don't know how people would contribute to it. I guess they have to pay to get their physical things over there or their digital things.
Like a permanent repository? Like
that repository in northern Norway with the seeds and plants, and just preserve them in a place underground somewhere.
I think it's an interesting idea. I think it would be extremely difficult to execute, especially with accessibility issues. And there is something to be said for not having all of your eggs in one basket, just in case something did happen to that one basket. But it is an interesting idea.
I don't know if this has, if this is something that you are actively considering, but I live in Westchester County, and I have watched the libraries sort of make a transition to being places that hold cultural memories and disseminate information about these disasters, to being the places we go after the disaster. They are our shelter, they're our plugs when the electricity goes, and so their health becomes more important to the community as the community relies on them more. And I've just seen that. I mean, that really has been a transition. The library used to put the close sign up when there was a terrible storm. And now, if they have generators or if their electricity hasn't been going out, they are the first ones to open the doors up. And what that means is they are also the portal to all those services government services, etc. And they helped keep our feet on the ground. And I see libraries as not just repositories for this precious thing, but also as an infrastructure, and a place, a base for which to which people can respond. So I'd be curious to know your reaction.
I mean, I think for public libraries, this was, with Sandy, I have seen that also in my neighborhood. I live in Park Slope in Brooklyn, and the libraries opened very quickly, and they were one of the resources that disseminated information about how to apply for like FEMA. I think, I'm not that familiar, FEMA, flood insurance. They were really centers that were very supportive in my neighborhood. So I think for public libraries, I definitely see that they have become community centers for, like centers where the community can go for help, for information, for support. Absolutely. I would agree with you.
I know that the New York City Office of Emergency Management views public libraries in the same way that you're discussing, and I think would encourage more libraries to be open to doing that. And I wonder if there's an avenue to facilitate that through Alliance for Response, kind of us providing libraries with the information that OEM would think is useful to distribute. So kind of give them a list of, here's what you can do to help in an emergency. And then we would have the list of libraries to give to OEM to say that these are the ones that have agreed to act in this manner in an emergency situation. So ultimately, when our response tool gets up and going, that's the type of resource that I could see libraries saying that they could be able to provide. I know some institutions might be able to provide a resource like, we have storage space where affected works could be stored, or we have a symposium space where you could hold a workshop. And I see all of those as kind of resources that people can contribute without it being a financial resource necessarily.
There is also, I want to say that the article, the 2008 article by Jennifer Mayer talks about precisely about your point here, the Global Warming's Library Challenge, about the Center for Information.
I'm from a much smaller community, Tucson, Arizona. Can you tell me more about the Alliance for Response? Tucson and Phoenix both had really big floods this coming Monday. So we have the same problems, even though we're smaller. How would I get something like the Alliance for Response in a small community? We only have 800,000.
You can build it. A Heritage Response, a Heritage Preservation has a section on their website dedicated to the Alliance for Response initiative, and they provide guides with how to develop your own local Alliance for Response. There's many that exist across the country, and it's a group of like-minded individuals who come together to make the necessary connections and kind of centralize all the information and distribute it specifically to a similar community, a cultural holdings community. And kind of takes the information that in New York City's case is already being put out there by OEM, but directs it to people. I don't know if every museum and institution necessarily follows OEM. You should. But if they don't, and they have volunteered and signed up to be a member of AFR, then you know that that information is being targeted to them. That information that pertains to them and as a collection holding institution is going to get to them.
Yes, I have a question, and I believe this question will be directed to the women from the United Nations. I'm reading this pamphlet and I see ICT several times. What does ICT stand for?
It was Information and Communication Technology.
Okay, because saying that ICT applications were unavailable or unstable during the first several days after staff were allowed to return to work, and it seems like this was constantly a core problem throughout. So just how much was that a factor in everything that didn't go well actually in terms of the cultural heritage? I mean, was it because you weren't finding out enough information that you weren't able to get to your public
Well, basically, we use an integrated library system to do all of our work, the cataloging, the indexing for documents, for, like so that people can access, find the documents and access them. Our catalog is basically a gateway to the digital repository that we have for UN documentation. So people use it to search and then can link through to the actual documents, the electronic versions. And also, as you all know, like those of us who work in libraries, everything is done online these days. We are so used to doing our work online on the internet, and our internet access wasn't stable initially. So we had to revert to reference tools, traditional print reference tools to respond to questions from our users. And those were some of the issues. And I think not just the library, everybody in the UN had issues with information access to our intranet, for instance, where we're supposed to go for, internal information, policies, just the latest announcements. Even that wasn't available to us and to staff here at the Secretariat.
All right, thank you for addressing that, because it did show up several times.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point about the not being able to access electronic resources, and Mr. Nasser was talking earlier about digitization as a sort of preservation solution here, and I wonder about the sort of tension within the library around that as a response. So, for example, if we're going to digitize it, to make it accessible so that it's not necessarily subject to climate change, whatever. Or more active, what is the UN digital preservation plan?
I don't think we have one at this point. We do have a digital repository for UN documents, but it's far from complete. It became operational in 1993, and the library has been digitizing documents retrospectively since 1998. So we have made some progress, but it's a small team of librarians and library assistants who are working on this retrospective digitization. I think the Security Council documents are done. Key General Assembly documents, what we call the official records, are done, but there is a lot more to go. We have the UN issues, it's a ballpark figure, we don't know exactly, almost 100,000 documents every year. This is for, if you consider that the UN has been in existence for almost 70 years, we're talking 7 million documents. The older documents will need special treatment because they're falling apart. We have a good portion of our collections has been microfilmed, so we have them on microfilm and microfiche. But we also have not done an excellent job in terms of the environmental conditions in our stacks are not ideal for microfilm, microfiche. Then there are also some other issues with them. So they're not always usable even for digitization. So we're working with both, in the digitization project, we're working both with the microfiche and the print material, depending on which is in better condition. And then obviously for a digital, if you want to have a digital repository, you also need to put in place the proper digital preservation, metadata, all that stuff. We're talking about it, but it's going to take us a while. The UN is a slow-moving organization in many respects, so it will take some time for us to figure this out, I think. We have begun. We have begun working on it, and we'll see how it goes.
I was just going to say I'm definitely not an IT expert, but I do know some institutions that when working with their emergency plans and their business continuity plans, work very closely with their IT departments to develop redundancy systems and things like offsite servers, which kind of adds an additional layer of protection and also allows for increased accessibility to essential documents.
That was kind of what I was going to bring up was
The example that AFR NYC is giving us is a lot of physical things from like galleries, artists' works, things like that. But when we're talking about our collections, we're often talking about a lot of electricity-dependent things, resources. So if we don't have the real electricity, then we're talking about what are we doing to make sure the electricity is there, or what are we doing to make sure there's redundancy within the system? And I don't think that we're talking enough about that. Go ahead, yeah.
Very much along that note, this is actually a question for you, Ramona. I work at the Noonan Standard Recovery Office as one of the cultural liaisons for Standard Recovery. And something that came up quite frequently in meeting with a number of cultural institutions who were impacted by Sandy was the issue specifically of climate control for sensitive collections. And this is something we tried to address to the headquarters level to explain to them. We have a hazard mitigation grant program where you could request a separate amount of funding outside of these public assistance funds for hazard mitigation. This is planning various funds. And one issue in particular we thought should be prioritized was this idea of when the largest number of requests were for backup generators, should cultural institutions with sensitive collections that must be kept in a climate controlled environment potentially be prioritized over other institutions asking for backup generators, et cetera. So curious, Ramona, is this an issue that applies to you here at the Noonan Library? Do you have collections that are sensitive and must be kept in climate control? And has that been something that was considered in your apparatus here?
Well, ideally, yes, but we do not have, like many other libraries, we do not have proper climate controls in our stacks, not for the paper, and especially not for the microform, the microfilm, and microfiche, because they ideally should be kept in cold storage, like 50 degrees or so. The colder, I mean, not freezing, obviously, but the colder, the better. I think this is something that we have to look at, and as we are now, we have a draft business continuity plan, and the UN has a small business continuity management unit, and I think we are going to meet with them in the near future to talk about these kinds of issues. I would definitely would like to see that addressed. That we look into those issues. That we, as you know, we have this big renovation project going on. And this was these were some of the requirements that we put in with these project managers, engineers, construction engineers. And so these were some of the issues that we were hoping to address. But the reality is that the project is over budget. The library is the last project to be done. We don't know whether it will be done because also there are some security concerns came up for the building. So the whole project for the library is in limbo. But these were things that we really wanted to have addressed. I worked on this years ago in the early days when this capital master plan was discussed here. These were the issues that were very critical to me, very important to me, and we did push them with the construction managers and engineers. So at this point, unfortunately, I can't really say anything. It's just not happening right now, unfortunately.
I would just mention that I know some other libraries and collecting institutions have collections of nitrate films, which have to be kept in low storage, and that's the type of thing that from a collection standpoint, I would prioritize as making sure that it's set up to receive backup generator systems.
So let me just go back to what you were saying.
You were asking about before then, Ramona, about insurance issues. Does anybody have insurance that they know the value for insurance of their collection? Yeah? Okay, so some of us do. Do you know, Renette, how was that valued?
So it took us a while to figure that out, but we really made an effort also in the light of Preparting and circumstances. So we really investigated our insurance situation. So, and basically our institute just has a cover policy. So a very basic policy. So more or less the idea is if everything is lost, you basically can shut down the gateway. It can never be replaced. So the overall insurance amount is rather low. But we have a lot of redundancies in this big place. I mean, we have microfilm programs, we have digitization programs, we have our collections that way in different locations. So we're working in that direction.
Is that
Something that comes up within AFR issues that you guys discuss as well?
Not AFR specifically, but amongst other museums and collecting institutions. I work as a conservator when I'm not co-chairing AFR, or sometimes at the same time. And it's always a question. I work at the Museum of Natural History, and those are literally priceless artifacts. You can't really replace a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's like you actually can't put a value on it. And I haven't been involved in any of the conversations about how they do value that for insurance purposes, but I know it's something that comes up a lot, and I don't really know how it's addressed. I tend to work more along the lines of prioritizing, not necessarily from a monetary standpoint, but from other values, historical significance or cultural significance, and if you kind of target your mitigation efforts based on that, then you've kind of already worked in the right direction. You've already highlighted the areas of highest priority, and you're working to address those ones specifically.
So let me just go into the next stage of the discussion then. What is it that libraries and archives can do to kind of become involved or be partners with AFR NYC? The way I'm thinking of it is this just a model for us to take and do ourselves, or is there room for us within AFR NYC?
I definitely think there's room. We are in this tremendous growth period right now, and things have changed so much in the last year and are going to continue to change in the next year. But I think that anybody who has a collection of objects or even digital media, anybody who's caring for a collection should be a member of Alliance for Response. Those are our targets. We didn't used to address artists or galleries until Hurricane Sandy, and then we saw that nobody was. So we kind of expanded our membership to include them, because it's kind of like collections to be when it's artists' materials. And I think we're going to continue to work with the organizations that are in the city that do kind of oversee those groups, and have them as members and help provide the programming that is targeted specifically to their needs. So I think that becoming a member now, and then when we have the infrastructure in place to start collecting information from our membership, we'll have a better sense of what our members need from us. And then we can guide and steer our programming to direct that, to address that specifically. But I think, like for libraries, the types of things that we would be able to provide to them are bringing in speakers for teaching them how to write business continuity plans or their own emergency plans for their collections, how to assess a collection from a risk standpoint and go to the steps to mitigate those things. Also, collecting the type of information like was brought up earlier, what type of resources could that institution provide to its neighbors and to its colleagues in an event? What kind of systems? It might be manpower, it might be just having your doors open and having the internet and the power to access other resources.
Right, like Marilyn was saying, the emergency place for people in the community.
And being able to direct people when they walk in the door, here's a list of places that we recommend you check out online. They might have the information that you need.
Right, right. Other questions that came up while we were... No? Shall we enjoy refreshments?
May I just take 1 minute? I wanted to present, the library has, some of us have worked on a research guide on climate change. I would just like to give you a sneak preview. It's still in the beta version, I think. But I can give you a sneak preview, I think.
Yeah, I was looking at them from over here.
So this is, we hope that this will, we're currently migrating to the new version of LibGuides. So this is still in our beta, in the beta version. And, but it will definitely go live on our research.un.org website where all our research guides live. And I can just give you a quick overview. This is information both from the UN, but also from other research institutes that work on climate change. So we have the video from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change on mitigation. We have different resources where you can explore the topic that we find useful. There is a page for what is the UN doing on the issue of climate change, so different UN bodies that work on the issue. For instance, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change is here, where there's going to be another meeting later this year, another round of negotiations. We have books and journals, selected ones, with links to our, some are online, some are in our collections. We have page of research institutes and resources for data on climate change. Major reports from the World Bank, for instance, but also from the IPCC assessment reports up here, and a page to get the news on climate change, the various ways to stay on top of the issue. So that will definitely go live before the 23rd of September. I hope when the climate summit is happening here. Thank you.
Once again, I'd like to thank Jason and Tom from Metro, Alex Julca, Beth Noonan, and Ramona. Thank you very much. Also, I would like to thank all our UN staff who really did a lot of help be able to pull this off together, all the different planning details, especially Edwin and Armando. And now, I would like to invite you for refreshments. When you are ready to leave UN headquarters, we will escort you down to 42nd Street. I promise you will not have to trek to 47th Street. So please enjoy